Dinetah is the Navajo ancestral homeland. And I've lived and worked in that area now for 40 years. And because the Navajo defensive sites are so spectacular, and they are at a time when there is an intensive conflict between Navajos, Utes, and the Spanish in this region, and these sites are unique in terms of protecting the Navajos from incursions by the Spanish and the Utes. I was trained by the National Park Service, both in Chaco Canyon and at Aztec Ruins National Monument. I've been working on Navajo defensive sites in terms of the structural stabilization since 1996. The time period for Navajo defensive site construction, also known as pueblitos, is up through the mid-1750s. But by 1775, Dinetah is pretty empty in terms of the Navajo occupation, and they abandon the region pretty much totally. I think that if we really look at the total amount of sites, those that are spectacular, like Stringhouse is, or those that are eroded to grade, I think we've got about 237 Navajo defensive sites. The stabilization work itself, the repairs of the masonry, in some cases is pretty straightforward. In other cases, there's been a challenge, but I would say that most of the challenges come in terms of the position in remote locations and on boulder massifs, mesa edges, bedrock promontories, and the logistics of dealing with that has been, in some cases, very daunting. I have consistently employed as my stabilization masons people from the Navajo community, and that has been pretty consistent throughout the time that I've done this since 1974. And my original idea of involving Native Americans in this type of work was to involve them in an aspect of professional archaeology that potentially didn't compromise them in terms of their cultural values. Stringhouse is unique. It's a later Navajo defensive site. It is part of a community in Paiuchi Canyon where it's located. Paiuchi Canyon is a tributary to Largo, and this particular site is part of that Paiuchi Canyon community, and it has considerable standing architecture left, in some cases to the second-story level. We're in Paiuchi Canyon. It's a tributary to Largo Canyon, and Largo is considered the longest intermittent drainage in the West, and Paiuchi is a tributary to that. And this is an unnamed tributary to Paiuchi, and we're going to use this arroyo here as access to get our supplies and equipment closer to the structure we're going to stabilize. almost every joint's going to have mud in it and be grouted on this side. Like I said, we're showing Melvin and Tony the other day, clean the loose out, get the loose out, wet it, and this stone will take quite a bit of water. You don't want it running down and having mud running down it though. You don't want to look like the masonry's crying. You just want to put enough in there to get it in there so it doesn't suck the moisture out of the mud. It's just a giant repointing job, except for right here. And when we get a little place like that, yep, need something in there, Arch, need something in here. Right here at the bottom, yep, and we're not going to cut stone out, but just put a stone in there, pack it in there. So, both Calvin and Mike Ache has done a bunch of these, and Ache's done a bunch of pueblitos. So, I mean, work as a team, guys. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Say, well, what did I do here? You know, work as a team. We're here today making a final inspection of the structural stabilization of the site known as String House, or also called Twine House. And we conducted these repairs here at this Navajo defensive site over the last month. We're looking at the exterior northwest wall here, and this had a variety of treatments to it. This section here had previously collapsed, and the stone was all right here at my feet, and we wanted to relay that area because it came down in such a way that water would have run in and laid in that area and caused additional deterioration along here in the bedrock. So we repaired that. We used most of the original stone that was part of that section. Most of the other areas were just repointed. There was extensive mortar loss between the stones and stones. So we had to do what we call deep grouting. And we repointed all of that with replacement mortar that is totally a native soil mortar unamended. The upper section of that wall has been completely repointed and repaired with our selected mortar source, and then below that is Aboriginal plaster and mortar. And I think it came out really well in terms of the color and how it represents itself against the Aboriginal mortar in terms of the stabilized masonry. The orientation for Southwest Ruin Stabilization is to preserve not only the structural integrity of the masonry, but the stylistic integrity as well. But you do it in that process. You don't want to rebuild or overbuild so that it loses its integrity as a ruin. I think what we need to understand is that if we don't protect and preserve these structures, that in a short period of time, in our children's lifetime, they're going to be gone. And I think that that'll be unfortunate in terms of us understanding a very important component of history, as well as maintaining the legacy for the Navajo community as an ancestral homeland. my dream for the preservation of these sites, as well as others in the region, is that my children and their children can go there and see these sites as they exist today. And that's my goal.